Voices from the Stones. A bond unbroken. The village of Eldwood drowsed under a blanket of soft golden light. James and Clara Harper lived in a modest cottage, its walls warm with memory. Their 5-year-old daughter, Emily, was their heart, a bundle of curls and giggles. She filled their days with chatter, her bright green eyes dancing with life. But lately, a shadow had crept over her, subtle yet undeniable. Clara noticed it first. Emily's laughter dimmed, her play growing quiet. One afternoon, Clara found her by the window, staring at the rolling hills. "Sweetheart, what's out there?" Clara asked, kneeling beside her. Emily's small hand pressed against the glass, her voice a whisper. "Mommy, I need to go there," she said, pointing to the faint outline of a graveyard. Clara's breath caught, a shiver tracing her spine. "Where, love?" "The place with the stones," Emily replied, her tone eerily certain. Clara frowned, brushing Emily's hair. "Who told you about that?" Emily's eyes met hers, deep and strange. "No one. I just know." That night, James came home from the forge, his hands rough with soot. Clara pulled him aside, her voice low. "She wants to go to the cemetery." James chuckled, wiping his brow. "Kids say odd things, Clara." "She's so sure, James," Clara pressed, her fingers twisting together. He sighed, wrapping an arm around her. "It's imagination, nothing more." But Clara couldn't shake the unease, her sleep restless that night. Morning sunlight spilled into the kitchen as James sat with Emily. "Tell me, little one, why the cemetery?" he asked, his tone gentle. Emily traced circles on the table with her finger, not looking up. "I have to see her," she said simply, her voice soft but firm. "See who?" James asked, a knot forming in his chest. Emily glanced up, her gaze piercing. "Miss Eleanor." James forced a smile, but his hands trembled as he poured his coffee. That evening, Clara invited their neighbor, Margaret, over for tea. Margaret was older, her gray hair tied back, her eyes sharp with wisdom. Clara recounted Emily's words, her voice unsteady. "It's not normal, is it?" Margaret set her cup down, her face serious. "No, it's not." "What do you think it means?" Clara asked, leaning closer. Margaret's voice dropped. "Some spirits don't rest easy, Clara." James scoffed, crossing his arms. "You're scaring her, Margaret." "I'm not joking," Margaret replied, her gaze steady. "Watch Emily closely." After tea, as they tucked Emily into bed, she stirred, eyes half open. "Mommy, Daddy," she murmured, her voice small but clear. "Yes, darling?" James asked, brushing her forehead. "She's waiting for me," Emily whispered, then drifted back to sleep. Clara's heart thudded, her hand gripping James's arm. "Who's she?" James asked, but Emily didn't stir again. That night, James woke to silence, too deep, too still. He slipped from bed, peering into the hall. Emily's door creaked open. Inside, she stood by the window, staring into the dark. "Emily?" he called, stepping closer, a chill prickling his skin. She turned, her eyes wide. "She was there, Daddy, watching me." James rushed to the window, pulling the curtains wide. Nothing but night. "What did she look like?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "Old, with a long dress," Emily said, her voice steady. "She called me Rose." James's stomach dropped, the name echoing in his mind like a ghost. The next day, the house felt heavy, the air thick with unspoken fear. Clara barely ate, her eyes darting to Emily, who sat drawing silently. James tried to work, but his hammer felt leaden, his thoughts scattered. Margaret returned, her face grim. "Tell me everything she said." "She mentioned Miss Eleanor," Clara said, her voice trembling. "And last night she said Rose." James added, his jaw tight. Margaret paled, her hands clasping together. Eleanor Grayson? Who's that? Clara asked, dread pooling in her chest. Margaret leaned forward, her voice low. A story from long ago. She lived here over a century back, Margaret began, eyes distant. A widow, wealthy but cruel. Rumors said she took children. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Took them? Margaret nodded. One was Rose Carter, a girl who vanished. They hanged Eleanor, she continued, but she cursed the village. Cursed how? James asked, his voice rough. She swore her victims would return to her, Margaret whispered. Clara gripped James's hand, her voice breaking. Is Emily? Rose? Margaret hesitated. If she's calling her, we need to act. That night, a scream shattered the silence. Emily's voice, raw with terror. Clara bolted to her room, James behind her, heart pounding. Emily sat up, clutching her blanket, tears streaming down her face. She was here, she sobbed, pointing to the corner. Clara pulled her close, feeling her tremble. Who, baby? Miss Eleanor, Emily whispered. She said I'm hers. James checked the room, empty, but a cold draft lingered. On the floor, wet footprints trailed from the window to Emily's bed. Clara gasped, clutching Emily tighter. James, look! He knelt, touching the damp marks, his blood running cold. Margaret arrived at dawn, her face ashen as she saw the prints. These aren't human, she said, her voice shaking. She's close. What do we do? Clara asked, her arms still around Emily. Take her to the cemetery, Margaret said. Face this head on. James bristled. Bring my daughter to a ghost? It's the only way, Margaret insisted. She's drawn to Eleanor's grave. Clara nodded, tears falling. We can't lose her, James. He relented, jaw tight. Fine. Tonight. Under a silver moon, they drove to the old cemetery, Emily silent between them. Margaret clutched a worn prayer book, her lips moving soundlessly. The gate creaked as they entered, tombstones looming like silent sentinels. Emily stepped out, her small hand slipping from Clara's grasp. I know where, she said, walking ahead, her step sure. Clara and James followed, hearts pounding, the air growing colder. Emily stopped at a weathered stone, its inscription faint. Eleanor Grayson, 1821. She's here, Emily said, her voice calm, her finger tracing the name. The wind picked up, leaves swirling, a low hum filling the night. Margaret whispered, Stay close. She's coming. A shadow rose from the mist, tall and gaunt, draped in tattered black. Eleanor Grayson's face was pale, her eyes hollow, her smile cruel. Rose, she hissed, her voice a rasp from beyond the grave. You're mine, Clara screamed, pulling Emily back. She's not yours. James stepped forward, fists clenched. Leave my daughter alone. Eleanor laughed, the sound chilling. She's marked. She belongs to me. Emily trembled, but her eyes flickered, a spark of defiance shining through. The ground shook, shadows twisting as Eleanor reached out. Margaret raised her book, chanting, her voice steady despite her fear. By light and love, I banish you, she cried, the words ringing out. Eleanor snarled, her hand inches from Emily, but a light flared. It burst from Emily's chest, soft at first, then blinding. Clara gasped, holding her daughter tighter as the glow intensified. Eleanor recoiled, shrieking, her form wavering in the light. A new voice emerged, gentle but firm, cutting through the chaos. Eleanor, your hold ends here, it said, and a figure appeared. A young woman, frail but radiant, her dress white, her eyes kind. Rose Carter. Clara's breath hitched. Rose, you can't have her, Rose said, stepping between Emily and Eleanor. Eleanor roared, lunging, but Rose raised a hand, the light surging. The graveyard trembled, Eleanor's scream echoing as she began to fade. "No!" she howled, clawing at the air, but the light consumed her. Rose turned to Emily, smiling softly. "You're free now." Emily blinked, tears falling. "Thank you, Miss Rose." Rose nodded, her form shimmering. "Live well, little one." With a final burst of light, she vanished, Eleanor gone with her. Silence fell, the wind stilling, the cemetery calm once more. Clara sobbed, hugging Emily, who clung back, trembling but safe. James knelt beside them, his voice rough. "It's over." Margaret closed her book, tears in her eyes. "She's at peace." But as they turned to leave, Emily tugged Clara's hand. "Look," she said, pointing to her wrist. A faint mark, now fading. Clara's heart skipped. "What's that?" Rose's voice whispered on the breeze. "A gift, not a curse." The mark glowed briefly, then disappeared, leaving Emily's skin clear. Margaret smiled. "She left her strength with you." Weeks later, spring painted Eldwood in soft greens and blooms. Emily ran through the garden, laughing, her shadow free of ghosts. Clara watched from the porch, James beside her, their hands entwined. "She's herself again," James said, his voice warm with relief. Clara nodded, resting against him. "Thanks to Rose." Margaret joined them, a basket of herbs in hand. "She's a fighter, that one." Emily bounded over, hugging Clara. "Can we visit Miss Rose today?" Clara smiled, brushing her curls. "Of course, love." At the cemetery, the air was light, the stones bathed in sunlight. Emily knelt by Rose's grave, a simple slab beside Eleanor's. "Thank you," she whispered, placing a daisy on the stone. A breeze stirred, warm and gentle, as if Rose were there, smiling. James laid a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Rest easy, Rose." Clara added a flower, her voice soft. "You saved us all." The family stood together, the past lifted, their bond unbreakable. Eldwood slept peacefully that night. No whispers, haunting the dark. Emily dreamed of light, her heart free, her spirit strong. The village carried on, the tale fading to legend but never forgotten. Love had triumphed, a family preserved, a soul redeemed. If you like this story, please give it a like. Subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us sharing tales like this. We're so grateful. See you soon.